Hello and welcome to our channel, The Watchful Warrior. I am the Watchful Wife, and today I'm going to take you to another city on the Merrimack River called Lowell, Massachusetts. So the first city that we looked at was Lawrence, Massachusetts, and this is a little bit upstream from Lawrence, and we will leave a link to the video in the description box below for you to see that. The city of Lowell is located 30 miles northwest of Boston, Massachusetts. It is the fifth most populated city in the state and was said to be founded in the 1820s and incorporated in 1826 as a mill town. You might be familiar with the term the Lowell Mill Girls, who were often seen in the history books, and was named for Frances Cabot Lowell. This is a Google Earth view of the city of Lowell, and you can see that the Merrimack River cuts through the city a little bit to the north, and below the Merrimack there is, it's kind of hard to see on this, but there's a whole canal system, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes. And I think it's extremely distinguishable, the right angle that you see at the upward part of that river on this view. Lowell is known to be the cradle of the American Industrial Revolution because of its textile mills. Before it was a mill town, it was home to Pawtucket and Pennacook Indians before their population declined in 1619 due to disease. And you can see from this map here that, like the city of Lawrence, the city of Lowell brought in a lot of immigrants to help work on their mills. Wikipedia tells us that Lowell started in the 1820s as a social project called the Lowell Experiment, and then quickly became very prosperous due to the textile mill industry that was there. And this is the population trend in Lowell starting in 1830, and you can see that there was quite a jump between 1830 and 1840 in those 10 years. And then 1920 was the largest population. Lowell has several nicknames, including Mill City, Spindle City, City of Lights, and City of Magic. It is home to the Lowell Spinners, which up until recently had affiliation with the Boston Red Sox team as part of their farm system. In 1891, an official seal of the city was required for Lowell, and so I thought this was very interesting. This is the symbolism that was described. So centered on the seal is a mill from whose chimneys are rising black clouds of smoke into a horn of plenty, intended to signify that Lowell's mills are the foundation upon which her prosperity rests. And then it also says that the seal bears the inscription, "Art is the handmaid of human good." The city is named after Frances Cabot Lowell, and I thought this was very interesting. This is supposedly the only picture that is known of Frances Cabot Lowell. It's just a silhouette of him. And he only lived to be about 42 years old. He lived from 1775 to 1817. The story goes that he was the son of John Lowell, who was a delegate to the Continental Congress and born into a Boston Brahmin elite family with ties to Harvard University. He was an overseas merchant, trading silks and teas from China and handmade textiles from India. And he was mostly known for founding the Boston Manufacturing Company in Waltham, Massachusetts, with two other people. Frances Cabot Lowell was also known as being an inventor of the power loom. He was very interested in developing textile mills that could mass produce cotton by turning raw cotton into cloth. And he had studied textile industries in Scotland. I thought this was a really interesting part of his story. So he saw how dependent the United States remains on imports to run its manufacturing industries. And so he went to the UK in 1810 and he sought out water and steam-powered spinning and weaving machines. He couldn't buy the drawings of the machines he found there, so he memorized how they worked. And when he came back to the United States, these plans helped to create the city of Lowell. A few years after Frances Cabot Lowell had died, the Boston Manufacturing Company decided to open a mill at the Pawtucket Falls in Lowell, Massachusetts. And so in 1821, the Merrimack Manufacturing Company was established. This is a plan of the city from 1850, and you can see around the sides of the plan that there's a lot of mill buildings that really look like the Tartarian structures that we've been seeing. The mills were really dependent on the canal system. So the canals were actually started in the 1790s to get logs from New Hampshire down to a very busy shipbuilding industry in Newburyport, Massachusetts, which is located at the mouth of the Merrimack River. And the purpose of the canal initially was to bypass a very large drop, a 30-foot drop at the Pawtucket Falls. This is the dam that was created in the 1820s to control the flow from the falls down to the canal. So it was built with stone as well as wooden flashboards that are still used today. And it bypasses, so the dam actually helps to create the canals that bypass this large drop. And it has very suspect stone wall. This picture was taken around the place where I was standing to take the video of the dam, and so the road goes over this brick wall, I guess it is. It looks actually like some kind of flooded out structure from a building. And just looking a little bit more closely at this area, we have a large stone wall, and supposedly there were natural falls at this site. But it really does look like some kind of old building or wall. There's a lot of rock in the front, so probably some kind of melted structure that was here at one point in time. The Pawtucket Gatehouse was supposedly built in the 1840s, 20 years after the dam was built, to control the flow of the water going through the dam into one of the canals. And I thought that this building was a really beautiful brick, old world structure. And you can see the brick layering at the top along the eave of the roof. And there's also a chimney, a beautiful carved doorway. So again, a doorway. It also looks mud flooded. The door is actually very small in size if you stand next to it. And then you can see, I don't know, I guess it was windows that were likely bricked up at one point in time. So the archways are still visible. Here we have an obelisk that looks to be disguised as a pole for electrical wires. And the picture on the left is actually where one of the gates is below the gatehouse to control the water. And on the right, you can see just the other side of that. So you can see the building has a large stone foundation, and then there's the brick that are on top of it. I don't know if that stone is just covering up more brick. I'm not really sure. The Library of Congress states that the Pawtucket Gatehouse was constructed in 1847 and controls a complex of 10 sluice gates and a navigation lock, and that the original equipment, including a Francis turbine, is preserved in the gatehouse. So this is kind of more what that looks like. We're hoping to get out and explore the canals a little bit more at some point in time. And that wooden gate actually seems to be hiding this beautiful stone archway that, again, we're assuming it was part of some kind of large building structure many years ago. So supposedly a lot of the canal system was created after the original dam was constructed, and that led to all of these mills getting built. And so from what we just saw, the dam is actually to the east of these buildings here. And you can see all of the smaller canals that were formed. Boot cotton mills are one of the best preserved mills in the city of Lowell currently. They were built in 1835. They initially had 4 brick buildings that were gable roofed, and then they added floor to these buildings, so then the gables kind of disappeared and they had flat roofs. that were connected by stair and clock towers. And then steam and electrical power were introduced eventually to these mills. And the boot cotton mills were named after Kirk Boot, who is one of the founders of the city of Lowell. And he has quite a story, but just briefly, he had designed, laid out, and supervised the construction of the mills, boarding houses, streets, and the first church for the mill workers of Lowell. And so at the time when the boot cotton mills were constructed in 1835, there were already other mills that were operating, including the Merrimack mills. And this is one of the old drawings that I could find online. So this is a picture of boot cotton mills. It's the oldest one that I could find, and it really screams old world to me. The people in the picture do not seem like they are mill workers just lounging around, but the buildings are beautiful. You can see the towers, the clock tower in the background. On the right-hand side, there's some kind of trolley and Lowell does have a trolley system, but that looks like an above-ground trolley. Here we have a photo that is more recent than the picture that I just showed you, but what is striking from it is that I noticed that some of the towers, like the tower on the round tower that's right in the front right, is missing part of the upper structure that was in the previous picture. And I believe the towers in the background are a little bit shorter as well. This is the blueprint of the clock tower at Boot Cotton Mills. And the stair tower that the clock is connected to is wood overlaid with brick. And then the clock face is also wood. So there's actually 3 clock faces on this tower, and they've been renovated recently. They're wood with 1 foot tall numerals. The clock is from Boston. Other notable features of the clock tower are the copper roof, and then there's also a bell that is from 1873 and it's cast in steel. It's from Sheffield, Massachusetts. And the mills, I believe, were renovated in the 1990s. They became partially owned by the National Park Service as well as condominiums. And so there's some facing now that are on the towers. Another big story that makes this mill building story plausible is that Francis Cabot Lowell created this system where mill girls, so girls would be brought in from the countryside instead of helping their fathers on their farm. They really wanted to participate in this upcoming industry of textiles. So they were hired for very, very few amount of dollars. And then the girls were brought to these boarding houses where they would reside. And the boarding houses were located all around the mills. So this particular one, you can see, does look mud flooded. It's not really quite even with the ground level. And the windows along the sidewalk definitely look mud flooded. St. Patrick Church was the first Catholic church that served the Irish immigrants of Lowell. It replaced a smaller church that was on the site from 1831, and this church was built in 1853 through 1874. It's considered a Gothic revival church design, and then, of course, a fire is in its history as well. A fire in 1904 destroyed the interior of the church. This church is an absolutely gorgeous stone structure, and you can see all the beautiful shapes of the arches along the windows. And then up at the top along the roof, there's copper along with the steeple as well, and the windows up on top of the steeple. I thought these windows were really fascinating because you can see they're different sizes. They kind of are the same size along the top, and then the bottom they're shorter and then grow longer. Here we can definitely see some evidence of mud flood. So the bottom of the building, there's some kind of these arches, and then actually on the very, very right side, there must have been some kind of either larger window or doorway. You can kind of make out the arch that was there as well. And then looking past St. Patrick Church on the left-hand side is a tower with a copper top to it, and that is the Lowell City Hall, which I'll show you pictures of that in a few minutes. And then there's also a building in the middle with a gold dome, and that is the current Greek Orthodox Church. It was sold to that faith in 1973. It's called St. George Hellenic Orthodox Church. So that Greek Orthodox Church originally was called Grace Universalist Church, and it was built in 1896. And the building structure is 2.5 stories of brick with Romanesque Beaux Arts and Classical Revival design. It also has a 70-foot dome that is considered a very early tile vaulted dome. And here we have the dome that I actually found going through some things online, but it was designed by a man called Raphael Guastavino. There's a Guastavino senior and then also a junior, and they were immigrants that came to the area in 1895, and they were the ones who designed this. They were from Spain. The father was born in Valencia and attended a Master's of Work school in Barcelona. So I thought the picture was interesting just because it sort of goes along with the story of how the dome was constructed. So it's used with thin ceramic tiles and was a very lightweight and inexpensive method of construction compared to traditional stone vaulting. And this type of tile vault was developed by the Moorish builders near Valencia, Spain. And so it is related to the Mediterranean region. So the father-son architect company also designed other notable architecture. So I just listed them here because I thought it was an interesting part of the story. So there was a theater in Barcelona, Spain, the Boston Public Library, the Grace Universalist Church in Lowell, the Biltmore Estate in North Carolina, St. John Cathedral of the Divine in New York City, and the staircase in Baker Hall in Carnegie Mellon University. This is the Lowell City Hall, and it was built in 1879 from land purchased from the Merrimack Manufacturing Company, which was the company that had established the textile mills in Lowell. And I believe these were attached to the main City Hall, kind of found on one of the sides of it, but really beautiful, round, kind of towers attached to the buildings. And you can see the finials and the copper. Notable components of this building is the tower. So the tower was actually designed by an architectural firm in Lowell called Merrill and Cutler. They had received the commission after negotiations about the design. And then other things in this building are the stained glass, the cast iron stair railings, the golden oak woodwork, and the foliage on the capitals or the columns. And then here you can see some of the design along the windows. We weren't sure that this seems like it's likely a facade to the building, and I'll show you why in a minute. But you can see the copper along the roof line, and also a lot of these buildings had slate roofs as well, and I believe this was one of them. So here we have the back side of the building, and you can see this beautiful archway, and then the entire back is all brick, and it looks to be a little bit mud flooded just from where those windows are at the bottom of the building. But yeah, the stonework definitely on the front is just a single layer of some kind of facade facing. And here we have a Victory Monument that is right outside of the City Hall. In the background, you can see another beautiful brick building with some really nice roof features and chimneys. So in this picture, we have the Victory statue, and in the middle, in the background there, is the obelisk war monument. And then in the very background is the City Hall. And you can see also, so this is the front of City Hall with the clock tower. And then on the very, very top of the clock tower, I believe is an eagle there. This is the first Congregational Church of Lowell. It was erected in 1884 by those same architects, Merrill and Cutler. And then it was renamed the Smith Baker Center in 1969. It became a performance center in the city. It was named after a longtime pastor of the church that had served from 1870 to 1890. And this is what the former church looks like currently, and the city purchased this building in 1975. But what we thought was really interesting were the dates at the top. So it does not look like 1827, 1884. It looks like there is an I in front of those numbers. So I 827 and I 884. But just beautiful, beautiful brickwork and a slate roof as well. The Church of the Immaculate Conception is another beautiful church in the city. So the history tells us that this building was excavated beginning in 1871. And then in 1872, the crypt was complete, and the upper church was completed in 1877. So the story goes that there were a lot of immigrants that came to the city of Lowell. The French Canadians came after the American Civil War to work in the factories from their farms, and the Irish came because of the potato famine. And at the time, the Oblates of Mary Immaculate came to Lowell in 1868 to work with a lot of the Catholics in the area and to preach the parish missions. This is the back of the building, and you can see the fencing all around it. It looks like it's badly in need of repair and restoration, but the building is just gorgeous. You can see all this stonework on this tower and the archways around the windows. It just has a beautiful, beautiful feeling to it. So this is the interior of this beautiful church, and you can see the very ornate altar, and one wonders what that was really for, right? But beautiful, beautiful design. And this, I believe, was actually just near the church. It's, if I remember correctly, it was turned into an apartment building, but might have been the rectory. I'm not really sure, but really pretty building as well. You can see the tower at the top and the copper along the roof eaves. I remember Kirk Boot from the Boot Cotton Mills. He was part of the Merrimack Manufacturing Company, and he was responsible for helping to appoint a committee to build a church. So in 1824, St. Anne's was created. Supposedly, he was also the person who decided the denomination of this church, which was Episcopal. The church had a similar design to the church where he was married in Derby, England, St. Michael's. A little trivia there for you. And St. Anne's was actually the first building dedicated to religious worship and was the first church to be established and supported by a manufacturing company rather than a group of worshipers. St. Anne's Church is located along the Merrimack Canal. The high school, Lowell High School, is right behind it. That's the yellow brick building in the background. And then beyond that, it would be where the Boot Cotton Mills were located. Here we have a better view of the Merrimack Canal. And then the Lowell High School was actually formed in 1831, and it moved to this location from a smaller brick building in 1840. The architecture and the details on the high school are very old world. There's yellow brick on the building. I'm not really sure if that brick is original to the building or not, but you can see some of the detailing on this building. And then on the right side is a picture of just the side street along the high school, which is made of cobblestone. On the left is a better view of the side of the high school with the beautiful detailed architecture, the wood along the top of the roof line, and the beautiful arches around the windows, and then this octagonal shape. I guess it's like a short tower or a turret. On the right side is just an example of the corner of the building. We felt that the gray stone was just a facing, and you can see the windows are mud flooded along the bottom. This is the Moody Street feeder and Merrimack Gatehouse, which really, I don't know, the stone in the arches really looked like some kind of damaged building to us, but these were built in 1848. The gatehouse functioned as a housing for the 3 gate mechanisms of the feeder and the protection for the gatekeepers from the harsh climate of Lowell. This was built as an improvement to the Lowell Canal system. The feeder connected 2 of the canals, including the Merrimack Canal. And when the 3 gates of the feeder were opened, water flowed from the Western Canal to the Merrimack Canal, increasing the supply of the Merrimack mills. The feeder also regulated the flow to the boot mills. The Merrimack Gatehouse is a 1-story brick structure with a wooden roof that's covered in slate, and then the 3 gates below are angled at 45 degrees. That's to help with the friction and turbulence of the water that's running through the canal. And this is just a picture of a beautiful Victorian building. I can't remember what it is exactly, but I just thought it was really pretty with the columns and the design of it and the geometrical shape. This building is the Elliott Church. It was organized in 1831 to provide worship for the mill workers, but this building was actually constructed in 1873, and it was named after a man named John Elliott, who tried to convert Native Americans in the area to Christianity. The plaque at the top reads, Elliott Church AD 1874, could possibly be I-874. We weren't really sure. It was kind of hard to make out, but this building is really, really beautiful. It has some pretty columns, gorgeous geometrical patterns. Unfortunately, the building is in very bad need of repair. You can see a lot of blackened areas, and also is kind of tucked away in a very rundown section of the city. I also wanted to add these pictures in. This is St. Peter's Church. It's a Catholic church. It's no longer standing, but this is this would have been near the Elliott Church, and I just thought this was a beautiful structure. So this was built in 1900, supposedly. It has 2 towers of different lengths. One's 200 feet and the other is 176 feet high. The church closed in 1986 and was unfortunately demolished in 1996, 10 years later. And this is the old Lowell post office. It was supposedly completed in 1895 and has some Richardsonian Romanesque features with rounded arches over the windows and a recessed entry. The 5-story square clock tower with a pyramid roof and tripled round arches were its main feature. The post office was used until 1936, and then the building eventually became part of the Middlesex County juvenile court system. But the building is just really, really pretty. As you can see, obviously the clock tower with the 3 archways on the top, and then there's copper that is along the roof line. It has the turret with the copper finial, the columns that are along the archways, and then the bottom of the clock tower also looks mud flooded. This is an older picture of the building, so it's a different color. I'm not really too sure if this was actually brick at one time and then the current building has some kind of facade on it. But this is an older picture that I could find. And then this was just a brick building that was in the area. Just again, really pretty. You can see all the windows and the brick inlay. A lot of these buildings, again, have slate roofs. And then up the very obvious mud flooding towards the bottom. And these are just other buildings that were near that intersection of the post office. So just very interesting architecture. Here we have an old picture of the Middlesex County Jail that was built in 1856 by the architect James Rand. He was also well known for designing the houses in the Back Bay area of the city of Boston. This is a current picture of the jail, which now houses condominiums. It originally housed 124 inmates that were held for petty crimes less than 3 years. Anything greater than that, the inmates would go to the city of Cambridge. It closed as a jail in 1919 and was purchased in 1926 by the Catholic Church and became a preparatory high school called Keith Academy. The academy closed in 1970 and then eventually became converted into the condominium buildings. The original building also had 2 hospitals and then a chapel that was added in 1900. And obviously these towers are just a really beautiful feature of this building. This view is the back side of the building, and you can see on the left-hand side there's a doorway that goes underneath the stairs, so this building is obviously a mud-flooded building. I hope that you've enjoyed this little history lesson of the city of Lowell and some of the beautiful buildings that are found here. We're hoping to return really soon and just walk around some of the canals and see more of the buildings that we'll show you, and just check out the channel for more video footage that we had originally. And we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.